They mocked our emotions as weakness until they saw what human rage truly meant. Entire empires burned before they realized too late. Our feelings were never fragile. They were our deadliest weapon. They said we were unstable. The records of the Galactic Council showed it clearly. Humans, species 3489, Sol System, designated emotional primitives. The Council's philosophers laughed at the transcripts of human leaders. Rage, grief, love, hope, such volatile words. The Council called them archaic relics, echoes of a species too young for the stars. But youth does not mean weakness. The first incident came at the diplomatic exchange on Arixa. The Talari speaker mocked Earth's ambassador during a routine trade discussion. To insult another was common among the Council races. It was politics. What no one expected was the way the human's jaw tightened, fists clenched, and his voice dropped not in anger, but in something far colder. "You will not speak of our dead that way," the human said. The room grew silent. The Talari laughed. "See? Emotional instability. You will never rule yourselves, let alone worlds." That moment was recorded across dozens of feeds. What the Council missed was how every human representative in the chamber stood without a word. No signal passed, no command issued. It was instinct, a collective shift. The entire delegation walked out, refusing negotiations. The insult had touched grief from the Earth colony massacre on Vela, where 2 million humans were incinerated during routine military exercises by the Council's fleet. The incident had been dismissed as collateral damage. To humans, it was not forgotten. The rage began there. At first it burned quietly, hidden behind diplomacy. The Council called humans naive for still carrying pain centuries after a war. But in silence, industries on Earth mobilized. Shipyards expanded. Military recruitment swelled, though no one admitted why. The Council thought humans were distracted, obsessed with emotions, lost in mourning, endlessly writing songs, films, and stories about their dead. They didn't understand what those stories were doing. Every generation that grew up after Vela grew up with rage carved into them, disguised as art, memory, ritual. Every colony child could recite the names of the dead. Every human warship carried the symbols of grief turned into steel. The Council thought it weakness. The First Fleet learned the truth. The Talari Border Patrol detected an unmarked human vessel trespassing near their mining colonies. Standard protocol demanded destruction. They opened fire without warning. What no one expected was that the vessel was not civilian. It was a test ship built in Earth's silent shipyards, armored with alloys no alien scanners could read. The human ship didn't run. It accelerated. The Talari reported confusion, panic, disbelief. It should not move like this. It should not survive this. Then the signal cut off. What remained was wreckage of 3 destroyers. 1 human ship against 3. The Council dismissed it as luck. Emotion-driven recklessness. Nothing more. But on Earth, the incident spread like wildfire. Not officially. No public announcement. No open declaration. Yet somehow, humans everywhere seemed to know. The rage sharpened. Colonists whispered in bars. 3 destroyers, 1 ship. Workers in shipyards carved new words into bulkheads of vessels. For Vela, for the lost. Children drew pictures of burning alien fleets and pinned them to classroom walls. This was no longer mourning. This was transformation. The second incident came 6 months later, when a human freighter was intercepted by a Kari patrol. Again, standard procedure meant extortion, violence, intimidation. Only this freighter wasn't unarmed. The patrol ship was found weeks later, drifting, its crew frozen in vacuum. The hull was carved with words in Terran standard. We remember. The Council demanded answers. The humans gave them silence. Diplomats smiled politely and blamed pirates. But the rage kept spreading. Alien analysts tried to understand. They studied human culture, dissected films of soldiers crying at funerals, parents holding children, lovers kissing before war. Pathetic attachments, the report said. They lacked discipline. They will fracture under pressure. They didn't see what those attachments forged. Grief made memory. Memory made unity. Unity made resolve. Humans weren't breaking. They were hardening. The Council's first true alarm came when a coalition fleet intercepted a convoy of human warships leaving Sol. Scans revealed weapons configurations unknown to the Council, shields that bent physics, and drive signatures too unpredictable to track. The Admiral in command opened communications. Human fleet, identify your destination. You are trespassing in protected Council space. The human reply was cold, calm, calculated. We are going to Vela. The Admiral laughed. That world is uninhabitable. What business could you have there? The human commander didn't laugh. To remember, when the Council realized what that meant, it was too late. Every human ship in the fleet activated broadcast signals as they entered Vela's orbit. Holograms of the massacre were projected across the planet's skies. The archives of burning colonies, screaming civilians, the faces of the lost. The Council had buried those records. Humans had preserved them. And then, with the entire galaxy watching, the humans spoke one message. We forgive nothing. We forget nothing. You called us emotional. You were right. The fleet raised weapons. Not at enemies, but at the very planet itself. They scarred the soil with orbital fire, burning the message, remember, VYLA into the surface, so it could be seen from orbit forever. It was not war. Not yet. It was a warning. The Council mocked it, called it primitive theater. The aliens didn't understand that humans weren't posturing. They were preparing, and the rage had only begun. The Council archives had always painted humans as volatile anomalies, creatures whose history was littered with wars, betrayals, and irrational attachments. For centuries, those records were used to dismiss humanity as unfit for true galactic governance. Yet now, with every destroyed fleet that drifted silently in the void, those same archives were being revisited, not as proof of weakness, but as grim warnings of what unchecked human wrath could unleash. The Empire's Third Armada arrived at Sol with confidence. They had studied human defenses, calculated projected resistance, and prepared with overwhelming numbers. 40 war carriers, 200 escorts, and thousands of drones unfolded across Earth's sky like a curtain of steel. Their commander spoke in calm tones, reassuring themselves that humanity's victories so far were statistical flukes, quirks of luck, or tricks of terrain. They were wrong. Human strategy didn't follow the clean equations of galactic warfare. It was not built on probabilities but on obsessions, grudges, and raw emotion, qualities the Empire had always dismissed. Instead of engaging the Armada directly, the humans let them descend deeper, let them feel victory was already in hand. Then Earth itself came alive. Orbital platforms, hidden in the shadow of the moon, unfolded rail cannons longer than skyscrapers. Subsurface silos spat nuclear-tipped projectiles through hardened launch tubes. Civilian satellites, seemingly harmless, detonated with electromagnetic fury, frying targeting systems and blinding command ships. But the true horror was not the weapons themselves. It was the way humans wielded them. The humans didn't aim for efficiency. They aimed for pain. Command vessels were hit first, not to end the battle swiftly, but to leave fleets scrambling, leaderless, terrified. Communications were jammed not with static, but with recordings, thousands of human voices, screaming, sobbing, raging, echoing into every cockpit until alien crews tore off their own headsets. It wasn't war. It was theater, a performance of terror designed to carve itself into memory. Within hours, the Third Armada was broken. Those who survived did not return to the Council with tactical data or detailed reports. They returned trembling, whispering that humans did not fight like soldiers. They fought like predators that had learned to savor cruelty. Across the galaxy, species who had mocked humanity's irrationality began whispering new words: extinction, inevitability, retribution. But what the galaxy still didn't understand was that this was only the beginning. The Council believed they were fighting a species. What they were truly fighting was grief. Humanity had lost colonies, families, entire generations to the Council's purges. Every strike they made now was fueled not by ambition, but by something far more dangerous: the refusal to forgive. When the fourth campaign was launched, the Empire tried a new tactic. Instead of brute force, they turned to psychological war. They believed, mistakenly, that humans could be broken if their emotional instability was properly exploited. They broadcast taunts across human comm channels. They showed images of destroyed human colonies, of civilians dragged in chains. They mocked human ideals of family, love, and loyalty. They thought cruelty would make humans falter. But they had misunderstood the very core of what they were provoking. Humans did not break under insult. They calcified. Rage solidified into something colder than fire. Pilots who had once been reckless became surgeons of destruction. Infantry stopped fighting for survival and began fighting for vengeance. Every act of mockery became a signature on the Empire's death warrant. And then came Mars. The Empire had expected Mars to fall quickly. It was humanity's first great off-world colony, but hardly a fortress. Yet, when the fleets descended, they found a graveyard waiting for them. The Martian defense grid was not designed by engineers following Council doctrines. It was shaped by grief-stricken veterans who had lost everything. The red planet bristled with rail networks, hidden drones, and orbital mines disguised as debris. For every ship that destroyed a Martian outpost, 5 more exploded in ambush. The Empire called it the butchery of Mars. The humans called it justice. For the first time, the Council's commanders began refusing their assignments. Entire fleets deserted rather than face Earth's retaliation. Colonies once loyal to the Empire began opening channels to humanity, whispering offers of neutrality or even alliance. Fear spread faster than any fleet, and fear was exactly what humans wanted. But for humanity, fear wasn't enough. They weren't fighting merely to survive. They weren't fighting for power. They were fighting to erase the Council's name from the stars. When Human Command gathered to plan their counterstrike, there was no debate, no hesitation. The words were simple. They called us too emotional. Let them choke on what that means. The galaxy would soon learn the difference between war and wrath. The Shackdal Council chambers were silent, except for the hum of the great crystalline engines that powered the orbital citadel. Delegates from dozens of star systems filled the tiers, their gazes fixed on the central dais where High Chancellor Vale presided. Report had flooded in, fragmented, contradictory, almost unbelievable. Fleets annihilated within hours. Garrisons erased without warning. Colonies burned to nothing but blackened craters. And the common factor in all of them, humans. Vale's voice cut the silence. You will all speak freely. We underestimated the Terrans once. We cannot afford to again. What has become of them? The first to respond was Admiral Kreth, scarred and trembling despite his medals. His mandibles clicked nervously as he bowed. They were never what we thought, Chancellor. When we conquered them, we believed we had broken their spirit. They wept, they pleaded, they begged. We called them weak, overrun with primitive emotion. But now it is those same emotions fueling something far beyond reason. A younger delegate scoffed. Admiral, surely you exaggerate. One species cannot threaten the Shackdal Dominion. Kretha's voice cracked, then explained how the Ninth Fleet, 50 war cruisers strong, was reduced to scrap by one Terran vessel. The chamber erupted in alarm. The Admiral slammed his fist against the railing. They do not fight like we do. They do not seek victory. They seek vengeance. They are driven by grief, by rage, by the memory of every child we burned alive. Their emotions are no weakness. They are their greatest weapon. I saw it. I saw a human captain smile as her ship burned around her just before detonating her reactor. She destroyed 12 of ours with one act. Gasps rippled through the assembly. Chancellor Vale leaned forward, his translucent skin glowing faintly with unease. You speak of suicide as strategy? Yes, Kreth rasped. They call it sacrifice. A murmur spread through the chamber, growing louder. Some delegates protested. Others whispered a retreat. Then another voice rang out, deep and resonant, silencing all. General Tovin, the architect of the human subjugation campaign, rose. His eyes burned with a pride that hadn't yet been shaken. Do not let fear poison your judgment. These humans lash out because they are cornered. Rage cannot sustain them forever. Emotion burns bright, but it consumes itself. They will exhaust their fury, and when they do, they will collapse. A voice answered from the shadows of the chamber's lower tiers. "General, you are wrong." Every head turned. An envoy, an alien whose robes were marked not with Shakthal symbols, but Terran insignias, stepped forward. His body bore wounds, burns, scars from whips. A collaborator. He raised his hand, trembling but firm. "You misunderstand humans because you believe they are like you. They are not. Rage does not consume them. It focuses them. Grief does not weaken them. It makes them unstoppable. You think their emotions are fire, but they are iron, forged hotter, hammered harder with every loss. You cannot wait for their strength to fade. Every day you wait, they grow stronger." The chamber erupted again, chaos echoing against the vaulted ceilings. But far away, in the black gulfs between stars, the words were already proving true. Captain Maravea stood aboard the Terran warship Resolute, her hands gripping the railing as the stars stretched before her. The ship had been built in secret, pieced together in hidden asteroid foundries, its frame forged from scavenged alloys, and its weapons ripped from the very wreckage of Shakthal cruisers. Every piece was a scar turned into a blade. Her crew, survivors, widows, orphans, veterans, moved with grim precision. No one needed to be reminded of their mission. The Shakthal had called them emotional, weak. But here, every tear shed had become steel. Every scream of grief had become a vow. The comms crackled. "Captain, enemy patrol detected. 3 war cruisers. Intercept course." Mara's eyes narrowed. 3? Good. Warm the cannons. Ready the boarding teams. The helmsman hesitated. "Captain, we're outnumbered." A faint smile tugged at Mara's lips. "They don't understand yet. Numbers don't matter anymore." Resolute accelerated, engines howling, closing the distance before the Shakthal even had time to react. Plasma fire streaked across the void, carving molten scars across the ship's hull. Shields flared, buckled, failed, but Mara didn't flinch. Forward batteries, fire. The cannons roared. One Shakthal cruiser buckled under the assault, its bridge sheared in half. The other 2 closed in, spitting torrents of plasma. Crew screamed as consoles exploded, fire spreading across the deck. Still Mara stood tall. "Boarding pods, launch." Metal screamed as jagged pods slammed into the Shakthal vessels. Humans poured into the enemy ships, not with precision but with fury. They didn't fight for territory. They fought for memory, for every face lost, for every name burned into their hearts. The Shakthal fought back, disciplined, efficient, but they faltered when the humans kept coming, even when burned, even when bleeding, even when one arm hung useless at their side. They fought with screams, with laughter, with tears on their faces. And the Shakthal realized the truth. This was not war. This was revenge given form. One cruiser detonated from within, its reactor sabotaged by human hands that never left alive. The last fled, engines burning white. Mara watched it vanish into the void. She whispered, her voice heavy with promise. "Run. Run back to your masters. Tell them we are coming." Word spread across the galaxy faster than any fleet. Humans, those 2 emotional creatures, were no longer prey. They had become predators. Entire Shakthal garrisons abandoned their posts. Governors sent panic messages to the council. Colonies once thought secure fell silent, their banners torn down and replaced with human symbols painted in blood and ash. And still, the humans did not stop. The galaxy had seen war before, but this was something different. This was a storm born not of politics or conquest, but of pain sharpened to rage that no logic could extinguish. And for the first time in their reign, the Shakthal Dominion felt fear. The silence after the battle was worse than the war itself. Not the silence of peace, but the silence of an enemy that had no one left to scream. The alien empire that once called humanity too emotional had no more voices, no more cities, no more fleets drifting in the void. Their civilization, built over millennia, had been extinguished in less than a decade of conflict, and the galaxy was watching. For the first time in history, the Galactic Council convened without the dominant power of the Xyrix Empire. Their seats were empty, their banners removed, their name already being erased from official records. And yet no one dared celebrate. The smaller species, the ones who had survived under the shadow of the Zyrex, trembled at what they had seen from humanity. They whispered among themselves, if rage could burn an empire, what would happen if it turned on us? Earth's representatives stood silent as those whispers echoed through the great chamber. They hadn't come to boast. They hadn't come to threaten. They had come only to deliver a message. Humanity would not be mocked, enslaved, or diminished again. But even in silence, the weight of what had happened followed them. Human fleets had glass Zyrex colonies. Human soldiers had stormed their citadels with fire in their eyes and grief in their bones. Entire worlds had been set ablaze not for conquest, but because rage demanded it. Every atrocity the Zyrex had inflicted on humanity had been answered with merciless precision. Every child taken, every city razed, every insult carved into memory, returned 1,000-fold. It had not been strategy that ended the Zyrex. It had been fury, cold, relentless, human fury. Captain Alara Vance, one of the youngest to rise during the war, sat among her peers in the council chamber, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She had led fleets to victory, but none of those victories had ever felt like triumph. Each one tasted like ash. She had lost her brother in the first assault, her mother in the second wave, and by the final campaign, she had nothing left but rage. She carried it like a weapon, and it had carried her further than any commander could have hoped. Now, with the enemy gone, she wondered if there was anything left of herself. The council speaker, a feathered species known for diplomacy, broke the silence. Humans, what you have done to the Zyrex has never been witnessed before. Not in the age of empires, not in the age of wars. You have rewritten what it means to fight. Tell us, was this justice? Alara rose slowly. Her voice, when it came, was low, steady, but edged with fire. No, this was not justice. Justice is fair. This was rage. Rage is not fair. Rage does not forgive. Rage remembers and it destroys. You called us too emotional. You laughed at our tears, at our mourning, at our love for our dead. You mistook compassion for weakness. And then you kill what we love most. That mistake ended your empire. Her words cut through the chamber like a blade. Species who had once allied with the Zyrex shifted uncomfortably. Others, the oppressed, the survivors, looked at her with something closer to reverence. She continued, we did not set out to erase them, but when grief turned to fury, there was no stopping us. We are human. We feel, and when we feel deeply enough, the galaxy burns. The silence that followed was not disbelief. It was acceptance. A terrifying, heavy acceptance. When the council adjourned, Alara walked to the grand halls of the station, her boots echoing against marble floors. Around her, alien envoys gave her wide berth, as though even brushing against her uniform might awaken the storm again. She ignored them. Her mind was elsewhere, in her private quarters aboard the human flagship Resolute. She replayed the images again. Burning cities, fleets shattered, the faces of Zyrex prisoners as human soldiers dragged them through ruined streets. Some begged, some cursed. All were silenced in the end. She had overseen it. She had ordered it. And she hated herself for how little regret she felt. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Rear Admiral Holt entered, his stern face softened by exhaustion. The council is afraid of us, he said without preamble. Alara gave a hollow laugh. Good. They should be. Should they? Holt asked. His eyes bore into hers. We ended the Zyrex, yes. But if fear is all the galaxy feels for us now, what future are we building? Her jaw tightened. A future where no one ever thinks to call us weak again. A future where no one dares lay a hand on humanity. And if they see us as monsters? Holt asked, what then? Alara didn't answer, because deep down she already knew. They were monsters now. Beautiful, grieving monsters wrapped in steel and fire. Months passed. The ashes of the Zyrex Empire cooled, but the scars remained. Human fleets patrolled the edges of what had once been enemy space, not as conquerors but as guardians, ensuring no remnants survived to rise again. Refugee worlds were liberated. Slaves were freed. And yet everywhere, the same look followed humanity. Awe, fear, respect born not of admiration, but of terror. One night, Ilara stood on the observation deck, staring at a Xyrix world they had glassed. Once, billions had lived there. Now it was a wasteland, glowing faintly with the scars of orbital bombardment. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass. A woman too young to carry so much weight, too scarred to ever put it down. Behind her, a voice whispered, "Not Holtz, not one of her crew." It was a voice of her mother, dead years ago. Or maybe it was only in her mind. "They called you too emotional. And they were right. That's what saved us. Don't let them make you forget it." Tears welled in her eyes, unbidden. Rage had burned the enemy, but grief remained. And for the first time since the war began, she allowed herself to cry, not for vengeance, not for fury, but simply because she was human. And as her tears fell, the galaxy realized the truth. It was never humanity's weapons that ended the Xyrix. It was not their technology, not their numbers, not their strategy. It was the one thing no alien species had ever understood. Emotion, the very thing mocked as weakness, had become the sharpest blade in the universe. And now, with the galaxy trembling in its shadow, humanity stood unbroken. For when rage followed grief, not even empire survived.